Hey everybody, today we're gonna go over some game journalist cringe here, with an article from .esports attacking Black Myth Wukong, its developers and even its fans. We'll be reading through some of the quotes in it and breaking them down. I meant to do this earlier, basically on the week that the game released, but I was so busy on my DEI video and it ended up taking me way longer than I expected. So ever since then, things have calmed down significantly, thanks to all sorts of other things that have been happening in such a short span of time, such as Concord's release and shutdown. Wow, I just realized that Concord released and shut down faster than I could get 2 videos out.
Ooh, self-burn. Those are rare.
Also, Dustborn's cringe and Star Wars Outlaws' messy, mediocre launch. With all of this going on, Black Myth Wukong managed to get a breather, but I bet that the game and the studio will once again be a target when they announce potential sequels or expansions. So let's just get into it. We have a lot to talk about in regards to games journalism and how they constantly try to present a false and malicious misrepresentation of the gaming space and gamers in general. We'll be especially going over their dishonesty, their deceitfulness, their toxicity, the way they constantly spite communities against one another with their articles, also their disingenuous review scores that look more like shilling than anything else, despite them getting on their knees and begging for gamers to trust them again. So let's get started. Right at the face of the article it reads, Black Myth Wukong's shameless lack of diversity is attracting the wrong type of fans. We shouldn't be carrying hate into what should be a safe space for everyone. Right off the get-go, we're presented with a malicious misrepresentation of the gaming space, insinuating 2 things. 1, that the developers and fans of this game are carrying hate towards groups of people or certain people in particular. And 2, that the safety of the gaming space is in question. This is total nonsense. The gaming space is so incredibly vast that it's almost like a micro-universe composed of hundreds if not thousands of different fandoms and communities enjoying their thing. Neither of them are under any kind of threat. This insinuation makes it seem like there's some kind of evil gamer collective gatekeeping entry and spreading toxicity. I'll let you in on a secret. Nobody gives a shit about what communities and fandoms you're a part of. Nobody particularly cares about what games you like to play. There is no united gamer collective keeping you out of anything, or influencing the demographics across the gaming space, or keeping track of what people do or do not enjoy. However, you obviously can't go barging into a Call of Duty community, for example, and make demands of them that don't fit with their core values of that franchise, and expect to be welcomed and pandered to, just like you can't break into someone's house and expect them to make you a sandwich. Some things are just going to be more appealing to some people, while other things are more appealing to other people, which shouldn't even really be a surprise to anyone. It's obvious that some things naturally appeal more to boys, while others naturally appeal more to girls. It's only now that we're somehow not meant to address facts and just fucking make everything about victimization, marginalization, and oppression. At its core, this is just a problem of narcissistic people thinking that they're so special that they deserve to be directly pandered to, and then getting upset whenever the world doesn't bend over to their demands or treat them as more than anyone else. This really is very simple. You play a game, you enjoy it, you go online, look for communities, you join them, you meet some people, you make some friends, and that's it. No one's going to try to attack you, no one's going to try and derail or police or destroy your fandoms or your potential to enjoy the things that you enjoy. At least not in the gamer side of things. Of course, it's a completely different story when it comes to games journalists and entertainment news in general. And all of this, of course, goes double for Black Myth Wukong. It's just another game like thousands before and thousands to come. It's just an action game. There is no monster in the closet. Okay, next statement. Black Myth Wukong's shameless lack of diversity is attracting the wrong type of fans. Throughout the rest of this article, you will see that the author did not once give an example of this supposed lack of diversity, nor of what constitutes a wrong type of fan. This is just a blatant dishonest statement piggybacking on the rest of the false narrative used by various gaming journalists to attack Black Myth Wukong and its developers. And the dishonesty isn't even just in the claims that they are making in these articles, it's also in the very intent behind making them in the first place. They're attacking this game and this studio because Sweet Baby Inc. provided their services to Game Science, charging them the impressive amount of $7 million, and were denied. And don't forget that Sweet Baby Inc. pushes their regressive and destructive DEI policies onto studios and publishers by intimidation. They put the fear of the cancel culture mob on them if they don't say yes. This is entirely self-admitted, by the way. Here's a video of the CEO.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
This is the way that they do this, and these gaming news outlets, alongside with Sweet Baby Inc., other DEI consultant companies, and of course DEI departments within individual studios, absolutely cannot allow this to go down and become a thing. They can't allow a studio that famously denied the extortion of Sweet Baby Inc. to peacefully and successfully release their game and get away with it. So they relentlessly attack the studio, the game, and even the fans in order to try and stifle the hype and of course the sales, as well as dirtying the image of the game and its fans to the wider audience. This is literally Kim Belair's promise to the bosses she intimidates into working with, to put the fear of the cancel culture mob on them in case they don't accept. And it is being carried out right now, right in front of our eyes, as loads of gaming journalism outlets attack game science with articles like these in an attempt to shut them down, cancel them, or at the very least, if they can't do that, to isolate them and their fans and damage the image of their company and game towards potential future investors and business partners. These kinds of attacks have potential to work because the truth doesn't really matter anymore when people's social media fills up with article after article calling something racist and sexist. Human beings, well, we're naturally inclined to trust news sources because they're supposed to be unbiased, they're supposed to be the news. And that goes double for when it's several of them sharing the same story. I have fallen victim to this kind of thing myself in the past. The majority of people browsing the web don't even bother to open articles. They read the spicy clickbait title and keep scrolling. Soon after, reality is already tainted by lies. Gaming news media should be more responsible for this kind of thing, but instead they just take advantage of it to push their agendas. The truth is, there is no political or societal propaganda or agenda in Black Myth Wukong. It's literally just a game with an epic style of tale to tell about the destined one and his fated return to reclaim what is his from the very gods, or at the very least that's my interpretation of it. What is definitely not up for interpretation, however, is the fact that this is a game based in Chinese mythology and literature. You play as a monkey, and the overwhelming majority of the characters you encounter and the enemies that you fight are animals and weird creatures. So I don't know what kind of diversity the author of the article is talking about. Within this setting, there is already so much diversity in what kind of creatures and animals you meet along the way. There are barely any human-looking people around, and the ones that are Chinese, as they naturally should be. So with that said, what the author was certainly alluding to was some sort of modern 21st century political injection bullshit that has no place in a setting based off of a Chinese novel filled with magic, monsters, and deities of Chinese mythology from nearly 500 years ago. This serves as a great example of how most games should be made, especially within the genres of fantasy and fiction. There are no ideologies, no agendas, no underhanded politics, no obsessions with race or gender. There is no anti-woke agenda, nor any woke agenda. No forced politicalisms, no extreme right values, no extreme left values, nothing. It's literally just a game focused solely in its value to the consumer as a fun and artistic interactive experience with a fantasy story, just like how we used to have all the time. This is the biggest issue plaguing the Western gaming, movie and TV show industries right now. It's studios establishing their own DEI departments whose jobs are to inject very blunt, socio-political messaging that often breaks immersion, world building, character writing, and story. Not to mention when they straight up break all of the fucking walls by preaching to their audiences, or by hiring consulting companies like Sweet Baby Inc. who are heavily fucking corrupt. They are ran by angry unhinged activists trying to take over this medium. But don't take my word for it, read their own. I really don't want to spend too much time on this topic since I already covered it in my DEI video. To get more detail on the topic of these regressive ideologies inserted into gaming, shows and movies under the false guise of policies and programs of diversity, equity and inclusion, please check out my video on it. It's a bit long, but I do go into detail. So next up, let's try to figure out who these wrong types of fans are, who supposedly are crawling out of the woodwork or whatever to come and support this game. This journalist sure as shit doesn't specify what he means, but by the types of accusations thrown at the studio, it's gotta be either racist or sexist, or both. Well, I think you can automatically scratch racists off the damn list because racists are, well, they're racist. They're not going to be interested in playing a game made by Chinese people set in Chinese mythology where the main character is the Monkey King from a Chinese novel written by a Chinese man, especially a game containing so much Chinese culture. And sexist, really? Black Myth Wukong broke sales records. It broke through 10 million sales in 3 days, and it kept selling beyond that point. This is by all effects and purposes a mainstream game. It even was highly anticipated before launch. And if not for Sony's little under-the-table deal to make it a secret timed exclusive on PlayStation, it would have sold even more. It's a little bit reminiscent of a phenomenon like Elden Ring. Now, personally, I am not a journalist, so I know that my own personal morals, ethics, and care for the truth may be a little bit lower than this guy's, I guess. But yeah, I'm not going to be accusing and labeling millions of people as sexist with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Not even a fucking inkling of reasoning for it. Especially when even my own girlfriend bought and is currently playing through this game right now. And by the way, the same kind of argument goes for the incredibly stupid racist allegation as well. But if that's not enough, then I'll also throw in the fact that this is the same kind of game that appeals to the same kind of people who bought and played Stellar Blade. A game where the protagonist is a female, where the badass alien-killing faction are all female, where the leader of all of these female badasses is female, where your very own elite engineer who upgrades all of your gadgets and exosuits is a girl, and where your life is saved by a woman at the beginning of the game. Although of course Adam also saves you, but first you are saved by your team captain who buys you enough time to get away. It's a game that features several strong and very skillful female characters. And yet, there it is, succeeding financially and not once getting attacked by any elitist, toxic, evil gamers for any reason whatsoever. Sure as hell got attacked by some game journalists though, for having a good-looking female protagonist who looks and dresses very feminine.
Gross! Ew!
Disgusting, I know. I couldn't believe it myself. Please, guys, boycott women today. The truth is, it's neither of these things. The type of wrong types of fans that this journalist is referring to are people who think for themselves and refuse to shut up and consume product while waiting for next product. People who don't base their decisions on what they want to play or watch based off of what game journalists pre-approve for their audiences, based on what they deem acceptable or unacceptable, not by gameplay nor quality, but by ideological bullshit. The same type of fans who rejected The Acolyte for the terrible show that it is, and who didn't buy other train wrecks throughout the year like Soy Squad, Concord, and Dustborn, who aren't moved to care about a game solely because it claims to be diverse and inclusive or worked on by DEI companies like Sweet Baby Inc., and who instead care more about whether or not the actual game is good, polished, fun to play, well written, having interesting characters, a good story, etc. And also the same type of fans who are onto game journalists and their trashy outlets bullshit, making it difficult for their gaming news media platforms to be successful and relevant again, like they once were when they used to be about the games and the consumer's interests. Gaming journalism has been fucked for years now. Any outlet that continuously carries on dismissing consumers' interests, pandering to studios and publishers, and going as far as to demean, insult, and demonize gamers as a whole for expressing their opinions and desires is just further and further nailing down their own coffins. Games journalists themselves are a cheap meme at this point. They shot their credibility and integrity a long time ago, and each year that goes by, they only make it worse and worse for themselves, with more and more examples of disingenuous, corporate brown-nosing, double standards, hypocrisy, incitement, dishonesty, untrustworthiness, and embarrassing activism, basically demonstrating more and more how biased and agenda-driven they are. These outlets used to be from gamers, for gamers, and slowly and steadily became a breeding ground for unhinged activists who failed to make it in real journalism, so they infested this medium that they hate in order to act out their fantasies of being relevant, important, and in control. They don't fit in. They don't even look like they want to be a part of this industry. The broader gaming community doesn't listen to them, not even to their reviews anymore, let alone their activism bullshit and hit pieces that are often packed with biased misinformation and always geared towards bashing the evil, toxic gamers, generalizing fucking millions of people to fit into this single box of white male right-wingers that more than half of the gaming community around the world doesn't even fucking fit the physical description of. The only sad power they still have is the ability to gather together like the fucking Power Rangers of fabrication and disseminate lies to shift the narrative or bury criticism by blasting strong, shocking accusations as clickbait titles, like accusing game science of being riddled with sexism or having a shameless lack of diversity in a fucking monkey game. But thankfully, even this irresponsible use of their power is turning to shit the more and more credibility they lose towards the general audience as they continue to demonize everyone who doesn't agree with them, everyone who opposes awful companies like Sweet Baby Inc. and BlackRock that reveal themselves more and more as sources of corruption, thought control, and takeover. The studio also faced criticism after alleged sexist comments surfaced suggesting Black Myth Wukong needed no female players, alongside an apparent slew of grotesque, oddly genitalia-focused remarks. I'm going to try to get through the rest of these as fast as I can so as not to make the video enormous and focus instead on a couple of points that I want to tackle. Other people have already dissected the entire article and exposed the mistranslations in detail, including a Chinese content creator who perfectly translated the bullshit that IGN fabricated. So let's just speedrun past this point. Both of these claims were nonsense. First, IGN purposefully mistranslated quotes from the developers to make them look the worst way possible without much needed contextual things, such as the fact that some of these lines were local expressions that mean something else entirely. Like for example, in the English language we have ass kisser. It means like it's about a person who overly flatters someone else in order to get something from them. It's not a literal ass cheek kisser. And what they said about female gamers was that the type of game that Wukong is already has a very specific demographic that is mostly male, especially in China, so there was no need for them to pander to women, which makes perfect sense. If you have a proven demographic that your product already hits, don't fuck with it, just make the game and release it. Similarly, you don't go altering the Barbie brand to make it pander to men with fucking dragons, guns, Honda Civics, and laser swords so that the target demographic can include more males. In general, I really hate this way of seeing things to begin with. Take Fallout for example. Women love that shit, and the games were never pandering to them either. It's a gritty post-apocalyptic world with disgusting mutants and gratuitous violence, where you can turn your enemies into gooey red paste. By definition, this skews towards a male audience, and yet, as I always fucking say, at the end of the day, what matters is the quality of the content. If something is genuinely good and isn't actually pandering to neither men or women or any other type of societal fucking group or level, it will find a very wide and diverse community of fans. Now, this isn't to say that game science is the pinnacle of professionalism. They have been known to make use of very crude imagery and advertising in previous mobile games, for example. But there is no demonic cult of sexism or racism. It actually just reminds me of our media entertainment back in the 90s and early 2000s, before we all started walking on eggshells about everything, over-analyzing everything, taking offense for everything, and for some fucking reason, giving insane amounts of power to morons on Twitter who would fabricate nonsense from basic jokes or mere statements, sometimes from over a decade ago. We usually say that, for example, there is no way that a show like The Chappelle Show could ever be made today. Hell, we even say that about The Office now, a relatively safe sitcom. The culture in China is not like our own. They're now walking on eggshells 24/7 over gender, race, or jokes or bullshit like, oh my god, no, how do we represent people better in the next Star Wars show?
Yes.
And good for them, because this is unhealthy as fuck, it's inhumane, it's tribalistic, it's driving us apart instead of bringing us together. And my god, it's so cringy too, because it's so privileged to grab something so fundamentally pointless like a piece of media that is meant to literally just distract people, and to politicize it so heavily like some kind of instrument that can shape society. Motherfucker, we're soaring on a magic cloud, beating the shit out of giant rats with a stick. As a monkey. What the hell is wrong with you people?
What are you, fucking stupid?
Our social media spaces are a toxic shithole because of all of this. All of these bored people thinking that they're on some sort of front lines of a revolutionary movement to shape the world through the fucking stories on a video game, or on a TV show about space wizards, or comic book heroes, or dragons, or whatever else they can latch onto. Game science is basically just a normal studio with some edgy advertising in their past projects. That's it. We can't expect other cultures to be as sensitive and obsessive as we have become out here in the West, especially on our internet culture of overanalyzing every single word, every single context, looking for a little useless nugget of offense to exploit and maximize for victimhood and cancel culture purposes. Also, what is this ridiculous fucking idea of wanting to cancel an entire studio and boycott products because of some brash, crude jokes from some members of some studio? As long as no illegal, inhumane shit is going on, why should I care about the individuals working on my video game? Some games are worked on by as many as 400 people. Am I supposed to check every single developer to make sure that they don't hold political views different to my own before I buy a game? Should I also scrutinize the person bringing me my mail in the morning? Should I ask them for their internet history before I accept a delivery? Should I scrutinize the barista handing me my coffee? Should I ask for their social media posts so that I can discern whether or not I want to support their work and drink a fucking coffee handed to me by them? Should I also interrogate the cashier processing my groceries at the supermarket as well? Should I shout and ask for the manager if I find that they shared an insensitive Tide Pod meme back in fucking 2018? How insane are you? Next up we have, the comments are full of unsavory replies from fans delighted that the game is not inclusive, because it's not gay or woke, a top comment reads, which at the time of writing has nearly 4,000 likes. So proud of this game that doesn't support any genders or sexual orientations, unlike other games nowadays, said another user. The common sentiment is that liberals are in tears, and it sounds like right-wing gamers couldn't be happier. Look, I get it, some people truly are vile, some people truly are disgusting. Comments on social media are always going to be featuring the very best and the very worst that humanity has to offer. If I want, I can go on a far left comment section right now and find slews of anti-white and anti-Semitic bullshit. Hell, if I go on TikTok, I can find the worst of the worst. So I'm not going to give a damn about the comments that they chose to highlight in their article. What I will highlight is the note that the author himself chose to focus on, which is, the common sentiment is that liberals are in tears and right-wing gamers couldn't be happier. Right-wingers? Were they displaying their fucking Republican voting badge on their profiles or something? It's just so laughable how these gaming journalists just label anyone as a right-winger or conservative just for expressing their taste in video games or their opinion that political propaganda, whether it is from the right or the left, should be kept out of entertainment mediums like games, shows, and movies. It's amazing to me how something that calls itself news of any kind can make such vast generalizations out of fucking nothing. This is a childish, pathetic behavior as someone who has absolutely nothing of value to contribute to the conversation, nothing of worth whatsoever to say in the actual defense of the content in these shows, of the choices made by these directors and actors and writers. Outside of, you're a conservative, you're a bigot. Not wanting political propaganda in entertainment doesn't make you a conservative. Write that down and glue it to your forehead so that you can remember it every morning. I am not right-wing and I absolutely do not want any external influences in my games. And if someone is right-wing, what exactly is the problem anyway? Like, what now? What's going to happen? Are they going to turn into a necromorph when the clock hits midnight or something? What is it with the utter demonization of random fucking people who you share an entire country with? Every time you go outside, you're with right-wingers and centrists. You're inside elevators with them. They're standing in line with you at the bank. They are just people. You're gonna be okay, dude? Just relax. Just take it easy. Take a chill pill, okay? Just relax. You're gonna be fine. This very idea of labeling people like this is regressive, and going after them online is even worse, like the demonization and occasional witch hunt of critics like Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker, Ryan Kinnell, Heels vs Babyface, Geeks and Gamers, etc. All of these people would be complaining about the exact same thing if the political ideologies and propaganda being fucking shoved into entertainment media were of extreme right values and ideologies. Understand this. DEI policies and overall propaganda pushing is not wanted, not specifically because it's left-wing, but because it doesn't belong in fictional media. Just the same as any other kind of propaganda doesn't belong either. Like if I'm watching Ahsoka and suddenly she shows up on the screen with a fucking Barcelona jersey telling me to support Spain in the next fucking European Football Cup, I'm gonna be pissed off just the same. And sure, you can do that, it's your right, but you're not a fucking YouTuber. You're spending hundreds of millions of dollars making these things, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it would be beneficial to make shit with a certain degree of quality and integrity to the source material and to itself and its creators. But what the fuck do I know? I'm not a millionaire showrunner. More on this kind of shit, including why hating Sweet Baby Inc. and what they stand for is actually the most normal and apolitical thing in the entire world, plus details on why DEI injections do not work in media or society in my DEI video. But for now, let's move on to the next topic. Blah 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 blah. I gave this game an 8. I've yet to encounter a single female character aside from one inanimate mini-boss called Mother of Stone. This is just a mute point. This shit that he just described is early in the game. It's just a pile of rocks. He didn't even bother to correct this point by showing all of the female characters that you can actually encounter in this game, all of which were paid so much attention to that they look like near perfect 3D scans of their actual models and actresses. Also, Journey to the West, the story Black Myth Wukong is based on, has plenty of female characters, and there's even a city populated by women, like Zelda's Gerudo town. None of this appears in Black Myth Wukong. I wonder why. I don't know, maybe it has to do with the fact that Black Myth Wukong is not a copy-paste of the novel Journey to the West and is actually an original story as a sequel to the novel. Or maybe it's because they didn't find any creative worthwhile way to include that village into this action game littered with boss fights. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Why exactly do you want your readers to go straight to assuming the worst? Shit, I bet if they had included that female village and carried on with the same exact type of game design present everywhere else in this game, meaning we would have to be fighting our way through several female characters, then you would fucking write in your article that this game includes an incredibly toxic and misogynistic section where the Monkey King beats the shit out of an entire village of women. So it's like fucked if you do, fucked if you don't. Let's not pretend like any of these points that you're writing are genuine. You're ideologically opposed to this game. Any decision they make can and will be twisted into a negative point by yourselves. Next. Diversity isn't a bad thing, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. Half the people on the planet are women. Around 10% of humans identify as LGBT+, according to a 2021 survey. We live in a diverse world, and there is no escaping it. You're right, but where is this game attacking diversity? Where are the examples of the industry itself being afraid of diversity when the industry has plenty of successful games with diverse characters and even diverse genres and styles that appeal to vastly different individuals? And how exactly is this industry afraid of this so-called diversity when the people at the top, the people in charge, the creators of the content have literal DEI policies, guidelines and consultants to work with? It's nobody's fault but their own that they aren't working. Diversity has been more than present in the past and it worked, but because of the aggressive way that some of them push it recently, such as Sweet Baby Inc., it's failing. That's not a fear or a denial of a diverse world, that's just incompetence. You're just once again misrepresenting the reality of the gaming space, and you're also disingenuously implying that you can fit diverse characters like LGBT+ people into Black Myth Wukong, which is fucking ridiculous. Explain to me how you would fit LGBT+ matters or characters into a Chinese mythology game that does not give a single fuck about gender or sex. You would just be ruining it with a clear obnoxious injection of DEI policy. See? That's how it's so easily detectable. That's why it's so useless to relabel DEI, cause you would have this Monkey King game beating the fuck out of rats, wolves, crows, frogs, pigs, bulls, tigers, double-headed serpent things, mice, fucking beetles, etc. on your way up the goddamn mountain to face the very gods. And suddenly, Sun Wukong would turn to the camera and present himself as a non-binary, anogender boy flux gay monkey before jumping on his cloud and leaving a trail of rainbow glitter. And also, why should it be game science's job, or any other developer for that matter, to push and present worlds, settings, stories, characters, etc. with all of this political stuff built into them as messages and as lessons and as standards for what people in the real world, in real societies, should think, believe in, and act on? Entertainment media is meant to entertain. What the fuck is going on with these ideologies hyperfixating on having their beliefs spread out and affirmed through entertainment media? Do you have any idea how much worse this is on people who don't even live in America? We're constantly being bombarded with this dumb shit. Like, imagine being a Star Wars fan from any other continent and you watch The Acolyte and it's dog shit. You go online and you express how terrible it is, and then you watch a mindless dumb fucking diss track talking about shit that has nothing to do with you, followed by articles and interviews from the director and other involved parties going off about shit that has nothing to do with you either, contexts that have zero relatability or association to yourself and fucking everyone else who is an American, and that oftentimes are even completely alien to your own culture, mindset, and day-to-day concerns. If you are in the entertainment medium, your job should be to entertain. If you want to be an activist, go be an activist. If you want to be a politician, go be a politician. Whatever it is that you want to do with this kind of thing, go do it. You do have that right, and you may even have people who agree with you, but you should go through the proper channels. Otherwise, you're just going to make a clown of yourself and your ideology, which I guess you also do have the right to do. But it's just that it's not working. You're failing societally and financially. People who go watch Star Wars or play a video game are doing it because they want to watch Star Wars and play video games. They want to engage in these fictional spaces. They're not doing it to interact with some shitty content while receiving politically ideological messages. This actually ends up having the opposite effect of what you intended. When you make trash shows with the intent to inject political ideologies, the only thing that you're uniting people on is how much they think that your piece of media is garbage, and how much they don't want political ideologies to infect their favorite franchises. Next. Having a diverse cast of characters makes games more believable. As established, it depends on the setting that the game is set in, and what kind of characters or theme you're introducing to it. Certain characters and certain themes do not fit into certain settings, simple as that. It helps female and minority players feel represented. Not really factual. By these people's standards, I would fit into this minority box that these people constantly pander to, and I have never felt this way growing up. I didn't care if the game I was playing featured white characters or any other races or ethnic groups for that matter. Same with movies and cartoons and anime. Never in my life have I felt a need to be represented in media in order to enjoy it. That's not what movies, games, and TV shows are made for. They are made to be good, and we are all united regardless of races, genders, or anything else through the emotions that good media evokes. That is what relates us to other people across this wide world. Diversity helps break down stereotypes, like the utterly untrue notion that women don't enjoy games. Untrue as well. Not that women don't enjoy games, they absolutely do, but definitely untrue in regards to stereotypes. For example, the way that DEI policies inject LGBT+ characters is fucking abysmal. A good representation of an LGBT character that breaks down stereotypes is one where they aren't being injected just to act and look stereotypically LGBT. That's not meaningful, and it doesn't break stereotypes. That actually only reinforces them and tokenizes LGBT people. Good representation normalizes these kinds of groups. It doesn't differentiate them from anyone else unless a moment calls for it, like for example having a gay romance option in a game. But outside of that, they should be portrayed with as much emphasis on what gives them value as characters and not as ideological mascots. Tokenism, on the other hand, is condescending and regressive to people and only manages to create annoying characters that are always going to be at odds with the meaningful representation that you're trying to achieve. It facilitates richer narratives and fosters more creative storytelling, and games that deliberately omit diversity feel narrower in scope and perspective, not to mention putting off prospective buyers. On a surface level, your sentence isn't entirely wrong on the situations where it would fit, but again, you're misinterpreting and misrepresenting the situation. There are simply places where certain diverse characters and elements fit and places where it doesn't, and the setting of Chinese mythology is a perfect example where that 10% of LGBT+ representation does not fit. The source content itself isn't even heterosexual, it's barely featuring humans, so how would this ever be relevant or fitting? By keeping LGBT+ representation out of influencing this game's world building, story, and character design, they narrowed their focus into delivering a more authentic mythological setting, which is a huge plus. Like, you're just wrong here, there's no way around it. And if this is supposedly putting off prospective buyers, then explain to me how this game broke through 10 million copies in 3 mere days. Purely from a business perspective, diverse games appeal to more players, which can improve sales by helping developers tap into new markets. Diverse games feel more relatable to a broader audience and satisfy the community's growing demand for inclusivity in the industry. They create opportunities for marginalized content creators and encourage us to develop empathy for groups we aren't familiar with. I could go on, but I'll stop here for brevity's sake. You could go on with this bullshit? First of all, there is clearly no growing demand for inclusivity in the industry via the methods that are currently being used, such as these DEI-policies and consultants like Sweet Baby Shit. If there was a demand for this type of thing, then games like Concord and Dustborn would be topping the Steam charts instead of being buried 6 feet under after 2 weeks or on their way there. Or at the very least, they would be doing a lot better than they are right now. Shows like The Acolyte would be raking in loads of money and completely dominating social media discourse with good memes, hearty discussion, fan art, and all sorts of other lovely things like Game of Thrones did back in the day, instead of having gotten cancelled and mocked online. There's more than enough data out there that shows that this shit does not work. DEI policies are terrible, and a big part of that is because they're not even about more diversity to appeal to more players or viewers. It's not about inclusiveness, it's about exclusion. Sweet Baby Inc. is a perfect example, because they don't even try to hide it. They make it as clear as day, and with pride, that their goal is to take it all over and change it. They despise established fan bases and demographics and want to turn it all into a fucking cabal of morons who are all as unhinged and racist as they are. The mentality isn't, oh, let's find a way to add some more moderate diversity and inclusion in little corners that will not break immersion or compromise other elements of the lore, etc. The mentality is instead completely ideological, and ideologically speaking, something that appeals to what they call white males is unacceptable, and they pretty much fucking label everything like that. Black Myth Wukong is a perfect example. I mean, it's a fucking monkey game. It's in a Chinese setting, made by Chinese devs, based in Chinese literature and Chinese mythology, fucking riddled with animals and creatures and no ideological bullshit at all. And yet, these clowns still treat this as a straight white male game. There's no straights, there's no whites, and you play as a monkey. This just defies all sense. How do you honestly make claims like these and expect to be taken seriously or to represent anything of value? You're literally just proving our points for us. There is no space for any video game or piece of media that isn't strictly obsessive of race, gender, and sexuality, even when the settings are already not straight, white, or even necessarily male. Back to the quote. They create opportunities for marginalized content creators and encourage us to develop empathy for groups we aren't familiar with. This one is rough. I mean, you're a real fucking freak if you need to see people who don't look like you in your fucking video game or TV show in order to develop empathy for them. I mean, goddamn, I gotta apologize to Amandla and her diss track. Turns out that nonsense about empathy was actually partially true. It's just that instead of saying her movie taught white people empathy, she should have said that it taught games journalists empathy. Because apparently they had absolutely none for people of color until they saw them in movies, games, and TV shows. Seriously, what a telling moment for our journalist. Because it's not even that, it's also the first part of the sentence. Since when do we need to segregate marginalized content creators into only being able to make worthwhile content about marginalized characters that represent them? What the fuck is this? And what's with the marginalize this and marginalize that? Have you checked with these content creators and asked them if they're okay with being constantly infantilized and victimized and painted as less than everyone else? When in reality they may just be normal fucking people going about their lives without any of this crap mentality that you've crafted for yourselves? Hell, I mean, if they're successful content creators, they're already way ahead of the curve. Why would a black content creator, for example, only be able to make worthwhile content about a game or show with a black protagonist? Why would a gay guy only be able to make good content about gay characters? What exactly is this? Why do you choose to see these people as people whose entire personalities, traits, aspirations, abilities, vocations, etc. are solely based on their skin color or gender or sexuality? Just look at how stupid this way of thinking is. Look how everyone loses. Look how impossible it is to have a world where everyone is actually content. Look how this mentality just sees people as these fucking potatoes whose personalities, personal tastes, likes, dislikes, interests, and acuities are attributed to them by their race and gender. Make a game in Chinese mythology with a monkey protagonist and only the Chinese, and straight white males apparently, can play it and enjoy it. Make a game in Indian mythology with an Indian god and bam, only the Indians can enjoy it. White people, black people, Latinos, Middle Easterners, etc. are all excluded from the experience. Make a fucking game set in gay mythology with a gay god and bam, fucking nobody but the gays can play it, enjoy it, and make worthwhile content about it. That's right, guys, time to throw your copies of Death Stranding into the sea. Shh. No matter where you come at this from, there's always gonna be some dumb game journalists or activists, although they usually are one and the same, complaining about how it's just not diverse enough, or how it's leaving labels X, Y, and Z out of it, or how it's misrepresenting groups A, B, and C, etc. Anyone can fully enjoy and make worthwhile content about any game. They have done so for years. There isn't anyone gatekeeping content creation nor the gaming space, even though that is clearly yet another false picture that you are trying to paint of our medium. Just another instance of disingenuous, misinformative misrepresentation and fabrication of bullshit from the gaming news media trying to radicalize people into hating each other. And finally, game science doesn't seem interested in any of this. I'm not saying every game needs diversity and inclusion shoved down its throat. Far from it. There are plenty of excellent games that don't have a diverse cast of characters simply because there is no room for them. But there was room for diversity in Black Myth Wukong, and the developer seemingly chose to ignore it. We already more than established that there is absolutely no such thing as room for any of this shit that he's talking about, and since he refuses to give any examples, I'm just going to move on. When a developer elects to only feature straight male characters, it sends a message that diversity isn't important, or worse, that it's a bad thing. This rallies toxic community members who share the same opinion, encouraging passionate gamers to go for each other's throats. Straight male characters? It's a fucking monkey! What are you talking about? Where does the straight even come from? Did you unlock a secret cutscene where you see him fuck?
Some people are really fucking stupid.
And again, with the labeling of people who disagree with his personal views as toxic. You are the fucking toxicity in this community. You are the one fabricating problems where there are none, by making shit up and labeling fans of this game, as well as supporters of the fact that forced DEI policy injections are deteriorating the media they slither into, as problematic, toxic, evil, right-wingers, and not even doing so with a single fucking argument to support it. On top of that, you're also labeling this studio and all its developers as perpetrators of shit that they never did, and you're basing it off of malicious, mistranslated information. You are the problem. Do you understand? It's not the gamers that you constantly try to vilify. It's not the developers who you constantly try to demonize when they don't suit you. It's not the game that you constantly try to bash. And it's not the reality that you constantly try to misrepresent and gaslight everyone into actually believing in. It's you and your toxic, non-inclusive, inhumane, regressive ideological beliefs. Catalyzing a divide between gamers is terrible for the industry. We all share a common hobby, and we should stand together to make sure as many people can enjoy it as possible. The world is divisive enough. There are countless conflicts happening around us that lead to tragic losses of life every day. Gaming is an escape from the tumultuous world we live in. We shouldn't be carrying hate into what should be a safe space for everyone. Gaming journalists and their outlets, such as this one, are the culprits who are constantly feeding this divide between gamers, fans, and consequentially, people in general. You use misinformation to craft a toxic narrative and feed it to the masses. You make shit up to present the false narratives and misrepresentations of the gaming space that will benefit you and those whose pockets you're already neatly tucked into. And then you use sweet fruity words to mask your real intent. We all do share a common hobby. We have done so for decades. The gaming space is massive. The limit is literally the capacity for human imagination. So long as this industry keeps itself financially healthy, which is a whole separate fight in and of itself, of course, then there will always be no shortage of stories to be told and no shortage of styles and genres for those stories to be told in. Toxic garbage outlets like this one like to pretend as if the gaming space is a deep, dark, oppressive black hole of oozing pus and shit, of oppression and of misogyny and all other kinds of fucking nasty things. Meanwhile, the majority of games, movies and TV shows being made in the last 2 decades have been inclusive of all kinds of fans by simply not being exclusive of anyone. Game science's biggest mistake with Black Myth Wukong wasn't this lack of diversity and inclusion that has been more than debunked by now, nor was it any media-described disgusting misogynistic statements that media outlets like IGN mistranslated on purpose and never even corrected after it being debunked by actual Chinese speakers. Instead, the guy who fucking did the mistranslations even went as far as to tell people to pirate the game. Nor was it their past of crude, edgy advertising for their old mobile games. Their biggest mistake, hell, even their only mistake, was denying to use the services of Sweet Baby Inc. It was simply because they had the gall to be approached by these fucks, like fucking Darth Vader, creeping up on the Death Star, and say no. Defying and denying their services meant that they had to fail in order for the right message to continue on being passed around this industry, which is that game developers will continue to bow to DEI policies and consulting agencies like Sweet Baby Inc., or face the impending, ever-powerful wrath of the cancel culture mobs of social media, and have their games fail as a result of bad PR, concerned investors and business partners scared of association. Anyway, this already ran on way too long, so I'm going to leave it here. This is pretty much where the article ends anyway. He only wrote one more edgy line in there, which was that if this article made someone mad, then he's got one more thing to say. Cry more.
You serious?
Wow, so stunning and brave. Classic woked out activist retardation. Everyone that doesn't agree with me is a toxic right-winger, and of course, anyone who gets mad at my blatant misrepresentation of reality and actual misinformative lies should go and cry more. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like if you did and subscribe for upcoming videos, and if you have any thoughts or disagreements on this that you'd like to discuss, then leave a comment and I'll get to it. See you guys on the next one.